Hey there, fellow classic comic collectors. As always, I'm Scott Harris King, and today I'm back with what is hopefully my final update on the ongoing CGC experiment Saga. Yes, I'm gonna have to do a playlist just for the CGC Saga here because I keep making more videos about it that I wasn't expecting to do. So I'm gonna get into that in just a second. Just real quick, I want to once again remind you my current comic that I made, Cthulhu versus Uncle Sam, on Kickstarter right now. Links down below. Um, okay, quick recap of the CGC Experiment Saga. Last year, I was hearing a lot of things about how CGC was having a lot of trouble, and I had done a video about how I wasn't going to use CGC anymore because they seemed like they're falling apart. But then I thought, you know what? Let's test this for ourselves. So at the end of last year, I sent in a batch of 6 copies of Starslayer #2. They're supposed to get pressed to CCS, sent to CGC, and then we're going to see what happens, right? So that was at the end of December last year. Don't get the books back until October. And when I got the books back, the grades were a lot better than I was expecting. So that was the second video I did on this, or the third video, I guess I did on, where I was like, well, this actually worked out a lot better than I was expecting. And then that's when stuff went sideways. Because I looked at the grader's notes and I saw that the ones that had grader notes all included pressable defects that had not been pressed. Particularly, there was a 9.6 where the only grader's note was that there was an indent on the front cover. So that's a situation where that is a easily pressable defect that should have been pressed out, and I should have got a 9.8 if that's the reason why it was a 9.6, which apparently it was. So that was very frustrating. And the day after I got the books and saw that, I got a call from CGC, from CCS specifically, because this is going to become important, saying that I owed them $90 because they have my books there and they can't press them until I pay the money. So they wanted me to pay the $90 so they could press my books. So I told the person, I said, that can't be because I already have the books and I can see that they have pressable defects. So what you're telling me is if they can't be pressed, right? If they can't be pressed until they're paid, and I already have the books back, and they have pressable defects that have not been pressed out, clearly they have not been pressed. So it looked to me as though they had sent the books directly to the CGC to get graded and sent them back to me. That's where I left it at the last video, and I thought it was all taken care of. But it wasn't all taken care of, right? No, it wasn't. A couple days after that last video, I got another call from the people at CCS saying, oh, they looked into it and actually my books had been pressed and I owed them $90. And I said, well, that doesn't make sense to me because it doesn't seem like they were pressed. And you specifically told me that you couldn't press them until I had paid you. And since I didn't pay you, there's no way they could have been pressed. So I don't want to pay you $90 because it doesn't seem to me from all the evidence that the books have been pressed, right? And so that's what's been going on for the last 3 weeks, is I've been getting emails and phone calls from CCS the whole time telling me I need to pay them $90 or they're going to put me in collections. So I finally had a chance to call CGC and talk to their customer service. And I want to say up front that the people at CCS, the customer service lady there and the customer service lady that I talked to at CGC, both very nice, both very professional, both trying to help. Were they able to help me? Well, no, because essentially what it boiled down to is that I had to pay the $90. And the reason I had to pay the $90 is that one thing they do, which is actually quite good, is that at CCS, they have cameras that record the pressing process. So they were able to go into the files and see the video proving that my books had in fact been pressed. So after all this, I paid the $90. Am I happy about this? Well, obviously not. because what we're left with is I paid $90 for these to be pressed, and I ended up with 3 books that have easily pressable defects that lowered the grades of those books, particularly the 9.6. Now, the other 2 both had pressable defects, but they also had non-pressable defects. So I ended up with a 9.6, a 9.4, and a 9.2. And I think if they had been pressed correctly, they would have all been bumped up. For 9.8, 9.6, 9.4 is what I should have gotten. But the 9.8 in particular, the difference in the value from one grade to the other is more than the $90, right? It would have been $120 of value. So I lost that. So basically the upshot is a couple takeaways. In my personal experience with this journey, CGC has actually, for me, been fine. The books were graded fine. They were shipped fine. They were encapsulated fine. I didn't have any issues with CGC during the process. But I had multiple issues with CCS because they were pressed, but they weren't apparently pressed correctly. That was problem 1. And then problem 2 is they had a lot of trouble with their billing. They weren't supposed to press them until I had paid. And so because they did that, it caused a lot of confusion, right? And so then I had to go through this whole rigmarole where I get the multiple calls, I get the multiple emails, I have to talk to multiple customer service people to get it straightened out. And so basically I ended up paying $90 for a service that doesn't seem from the evidence to have been 100% successful. It caused me weeks worth of hassle to get it straightened out. And when I did get it straightened out, I still was just on the hook for stuff that wasn't done right. And I told them when I called, I said, it's not worth it for me to resubmit these books, so I don't want to do that. They did not offer me any kind of discount or any kind of anything for the trouble, because I guess as far as they were concerned, it was fine. So all I can say is, again, this is just my very tiny sample size personal experience. Not speaking for anything else. But if I was in a position, which I'm not, where I had to have something graded at CGC, I would have it pressed by somebody else first, because all the problems that I had with the shipment were on the CCS side. And I learned a lot more about the structure going through all this stuff, because CGC and CCS are considered to be separate companies. And that's not really clear when you're filling out the form, that they're billed separately. And so even though I had given my, payment information to CGC and had paid CGC, none of that transferred over to CCS. So I had to go through all this stuff on the other side with CCS. And then I don't understand why the defects weren't pressed out. They were, not only are they easily pressable defects, they are the main things you get pressing for. It was stuff for like light bends in cover, like light creases, light bending, light indentations. Like, it's the basic stuff. That's why you have things pressed. Because the books were nice to begin with. They didn't have any major defects, or else I wouldn't have sent them in. It's not like I had a spine roll I was trying to get corrected. All I was trying to, they were already nice to begin with. Everything I sent in was over a 9.0 unpressed. So I don't understand how they could have pressed those books and not gotten those defects out. So I would say, again, just a very small sample size, but my personal experience, I have to recommend, if you're going to send something to CGC and you need it pressed, maybe you should find someone else. So that's it. I'm praying to Odin that this is the last video I have to do about this. As far as I know, it's all resolved. Got the books here. I've paid everybody, even though I didn't want to, but I have. And I'm definitely not going to resubmit these books. I do have a 9.6 that should be a 9.8, and if someone wants to trade for that, it'll be going in a trading pool at some point. So if you want to trade for that, and then resubmit it to try and bump it up to a 9.8, certainly seems possible, but it's definitely not worth it for me. So I don't want to have anything more to do with any of this process. So that's it. Let me know what you think down below. I'll see you next time.